Welcome into the most electric podcast in sports betting entertainment. My name is Tanner Kern, and I am a certified G and a bona fide stud. And this is Grant Mitchell, and I'm better than him at everything, and you can't teach that. Bada boom. This is Ride the Line, the newest podcast to the World Sports Network. How you doing, Grant?
Doing great, Tanner. It's great to see that you are still defaming me in the first episode on our new platform, WSN. Very excited to be here helping out these guys. Not so excited to see your face, but hey, I've worked with you for a couple of years. I can put up with you.
Grant, I have one question for you, and I'm going to put the side that you just made fun of me right now, but I have one question. And this is to the whole audience, too. This is the Fade the Public audience that we used to do a podcast with. This is to any audience that has found us today listening to the debut episode of the greatest podcast in sports betting entertainment. Grant, are you riding?
You know what, Tanner? I think you're going to have to wait till the end of the show to find out.
That's a lame answer. But anyways, this is a new podcast on WSN. It's a sports betting focused podcast. We also talk general sports news and all that good stuff. Basically, we talk about the greatest thing in the world, and that is sports.
What do people do who don't watch sports? Like, what do they do? What is a day in the life look like of someone who doesn't watch sports? I can't even imagine it. Like, all of my free time, my entire life is, early in the mornings, I'm watching Sports Center. If I'm driving, I'm listening to sports podcasts or sports radio. When I get home and I have nothing to do in the evening, I'm watching the basketball. What do you do?
I mean, I don't know. I think about this a lot because I know a lot of people, and I ask them, like, what do you do with your day if you don't watch sports? And they really it seems like a pretty empty life. I'm going to be honest with you. If you don't watch sports, it's a sad life because sports are great. Like today I woke up, I looked at what I was going to bet on. There's an 11:30 game. There's a 2:00 game. Let's go Georgia Tech. Now, if you're listening to this after the fact, which you will be, hopefully Georgia Tech won. But there's a lot of college basketball action, especially in the month of March. Like if you don't watch college basketball, I don't know what you're doing with your life because you're missing out on chances to make money and chances to be entertained.
And throughout the tournament, make sure you guys are checking the WSN website. We're going to have all sorts of different content going up there. A lot of stuff you guys aren't going to want to miss out. Maybe some promos to help make you guys some money on the sports books. You never know what you're going to find.
Yep, there's a ton of stuff over at WSN. So our ultimate goal is to marry this podcast to the website, get the articles cooking relating to what we're going to talk about in the podcast and all that. But it will be a work in progress. But I am very excited to be here talking sports with WSN. And I know Grant is as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And Tanner, I know you're over the moon that we get to start our very first show of Ride the Line with your favorite team, the Boston Celtics. Now, might not be in the circumstances that you would hope for because Grant Williams, we might share a first name, but we don't share any clutch genes because I would have made at least one of those free throws. He goes up to the free throw line at the end of the fourth quarter, looks Donovan Mitchell in the eye, says, I'm going to make both of these. By the way, the game was tied with just a few seconds left. He misses both. The game goes to overtime. The Cleveland Cavaliers emerge victorious, 118 to 114 in overtime. Two losses in 2 days for the Celtics. One went to overtime, one went to double overtime. Tanner, what are your impressions on Grant Williams' lack of ice in his veins and also just the Celtics in general right now?
Well, first off, I want to give a shout out to the Celtics because without our Lord and Savior, Jason Tatum, playing, they still showed up and they were in a position to win that game. So I'll say that. With that being said, Grant Williams had that dog in him, and then it just slowly crawled out of him and disappeared. He had no dog
in him.
Yeah, he had a chihuahua in him by the end. I mean, he had like a freaking bulldog in there when he said, I'm going to make both these. And then the chihuahua came out and he missed everything. So that was bad. My biggest pet peeve in sports betting is when players miss free throws. It's a free throw. Get it free. You make them. In college basketball, they miss them all the time. So I'm set up to get my heart broken. In the NBA, that shouldn't happen. They're professional athletes. They're paid to make money. The same thing happened with Jaylen Brown earlier in the season. Now he redeemed himself, but we can't miss our damn free throws. This is a game you should have won. The night before was a game realistically you should have won, and you lost two. This one hurts even more because even if he makes one of those with 0.8 seconds left on the clock, Cleveland is not winning that basketball game unless there's a Hail Mary long shot basket that goes in. So it was sad. But Grant Williams, you don't have that dog in you, and I suggest that you stop talking and make some free throws.
And Grant Williams shot 90% from the free throw line last year. I don't think he's quite as high this year. I want to say he's right around 81%. So it's pretty abnormal to see him go up and brick those shots. By the way, Grant Williams, not trying to take any personal shots. I'll make fun of myself first before I get into it. I've got a big nose. My arms are a little short for my body. I look a little funny. But Grant Williams does not look like a basketball player. Can we agree on that?
Yeah, and I'll tell you what, Grant Williams, I want to put him down a little bit because I play pickup every Wednesday night. I'm probably one of the worst basketball players in the world. I'm big. I can't jump. I'm just not a good basketball player. I'll tell you that. Grant Williams, I make my free throws on Wednesday nights. I make them all. I don't really miss. I probably shoot like 80% from the free throw line, and you can't even make one with the game on the line. But he doesn't look like a basketball player. I love Grant Williams. I do. I don't love him today, but I love him.
Do you play basketball with your Orange Theory group of moms that you've met?
No, the moms love me though. I save them for after the basketball games.
Oh, I see. Big
Hey
baller
Grant,
alert.
are you riding right now?
I told you, Tanner. Keep listening to the show, and I might give you an answer by the end. Looking at the Celtics overall, Tanner, because it was a good win for the Cavs, but it was one that they should have gotten. Obviously, the Celtics had just went to double overtime the night before, like we talked about, and Jason Tatum wasn't there. Jaylen Brown was trying his best to will them, but if you've got Jaylen Brown going one-on-one versus Donovan Mitchell, you call that a wash, and from there you would figure that the Cavs were going to win that game. That's why the line moved from what was a 1.5 to 6 points all of a sudden in just a couple of hours after Tatum wasn't going to play. So Cavaliers really needed to win that game. Also, they're coming under serious pressure from the Knicks, who are the 5 seed in the Eastern Conference right now. They are only a game behind the Cavs, so the Cavs needed that game to move up and stave off those guys. I'm starting to lose a little bit of confidence in the Celtics, and I'm not in any way, shape, or form saying that they're a bad team. Don't get me mistaken. I think they can still, maybe not easily, but still very, very realistically get to the Eastern Conference Finals. But at the start of the year, they were so dominant, and they were so clearly the best team in basketball. But not only have some of their metrics and their statistics started to regress, they're now losing those sort of championship playoff type atmosphere games. Like that game against the Knicks, that was a playoff atmosphere. The Knicks went on the road in double overtime without Jalen Brunson, and they took it to the Celtics. Emmanuel quickly gives you 38, 8, and 7. I'm not going to call the other night a playoff atmosphere because, again, Tatum wasn't playing. It was a back-to-back after you just went to double overtime. That's not going to happen in the playoffs. But it was another game that you would have loved to have won. I mean, the Celtics have now lost 3 straight and 4 out of their last 5. As a Boston loyalist, are you worried that they're coming under threat from these other teams in the East?
No, I mean, that Knicks game was one they should have won, but a lot of people are like, oh, Jalen Brunson didn't even play. Well, quickly gave you more production than Jalen Brunson was going to give you, in my opinion, on a standard night from Jalen Brunson. Now, he's fantastic, but quickly was unreal in that game. I am slightly worried about them. The biggest thing that I'm worried about is like Jason Tatum. He just complains all the damn time. He complains a lot. And that brings down the team. Like, move on, make the next play, start playing basketball, play Boston basketball like they did earlier in the season. Like, things aren't going to go your way the entire year. I think now we're starting to hit some adversity and the team's kind of cracking a little bit. They will be fine down the stretch. The bottom line is, can they beat Milwaukee in a 7-game series? Yes. That's the question. So I think they can do that, but they got to get there first and they got to stay in one piece. So
I don't fully agree with you, honestly. I think Milwaukee wipes them up. I think Milwaukee would have beat them last year if Chris Middleton hadn't gotten injured. They still gave him a pretty good fight. I think that Milwaukee wins that series.
Who won? Who won, though? Who won?
Yeah, it was injuries, and it wasn't one of those expected injuries, right? Like if we were talking about the Lakers or we were talking about the Suns or we were talking about the Clippers, we would say you have to factor injuries into when you're making your predictions because those teams and those players are so commonly injured, so frequently injured. But the Bucks don't really suffer a whole lot of injuries. And so for Chris Middleton to be out for as long as he was, especially pretty much out of nowhere, right when the playoffs start, it was something you couldn't have planned for. And so I think that was really sort of devastating to them. As great as Giannis is, I think he's the best player in the world. They've talked about both him, Mike Budenholzer, the coach, the other guys on the team. They've said that Chris Middleton a lot of times was their closer in the playoffs. He had some really memorable moments. I can remember a buzzer beater in the 4th quarter of the playoffs against the Miami Heat a couple of years ago. So that was a big loss. I still think Milwaukee is the team to beat in the East. And last time I checked, if you look at FanDuel Sportsbook, I think the Boston Celtics are still the favorites in the East, even though they're the 2 seed. I would definitely fade that in favor of the Bucks. Like I said, I think the Bucks are the better team there, and I'm getting more value out of those guys. I would definitely go look at Milwaukee.
You ever seen Chris Middleton's haircut?
Listen, what is that? I get we were just hating on Grant Williams, but we don't have to attack Chris Middleton. He's done nothing wrong.
He's got to grow his hair out a little bit, though, I think.
Okay, but maybe he can't.
Can he?
I don't know. I mean, I guess you could always
I've seen
find
him
a
with
turkey
longer
to
hair
get some hair
before.
implants.
I've seen him with longer hair before.
All right. Well, hair follicles aside, the Bucks are a better team than the Celtics, in my opinion.
Grant, you riding right now?
Are you? How many times are you going to say that before the show ends?
So you answered the damn question. Okay, Celtics are going to be fine. Grant Williams, get that dog back in you. I don't know what you got to do. Go shoot 1,000 free throws. Wake up early today. Get it done. I hope he's in the gym right now cooking because you know what? I was in the sports book studying early this morning, so I hope he's got that same dog in him that I do. Anyways, Grant, the NBA, we're going to talk about that a little more later in the show. But we have some college basketball to discuss. Conference championship week is here. March Madness, the NCAA tournament quickly approaching. Very excited for all that. And the great thing about this year, at least in my opinion, is that we don't know who's going to win really anything because the teams are just all kind of not mid. I mean, there's some good teams, but there's a lot of teams in the same area.
I definitely think that's the right stance to have going into this. We talk about what team is going to win March Madness. It's more so looking at what team is going to lose in March Madness. And granted, we're previewing the conference tournaments, but let's just look ahead to March Madness because that's what everybody's looking at. You want to go through your brackets and you're not picking winners, you're picking losers because there is no clear winner. There's no team that truly stands above the rest. A lot of people like UCLA, but now you've got an injury to Clark, and that's obviously going to hold you back a bit. So there are just problems you can find everywhere. Like Zach Edey, Purdue, he's had a phenomenal season. He's probably going to win Player of the Year. But then you look at what the player he is. Is he going to get drafted high in the NBA draft? Most likely not. I mean, we saw Luke Garza win National Player of the Year, and he got drafted in the second round, I believe. I think Edey could be in for a similar sort of fate. And when the NBA scouts are telling you that, when tournament time rolls around, you're probably going to start to see some of those faults reveal themselves. So it's definitely going to be a very interesting tournament. The first tournament we are going to talk about, though, it's the conference tournament. It's a former home of mine. I went to school at Virginia Tech, so we're going to be talking about the Atlantic Coast Conference, the ACC. Somewhat because it's first alphabetically and also partially because it is potentially the worst of the Power 6 conferences. Would you say that's a fair assessment, Tanner?
I do think that's a fair assessment. I think Miami, even though they're only a game better than Virginia, is the better team there. And I do think they win this conference. I mean, you know a little more about the ACC because you did go to Virginia Tech, but still, it's not a great conference based on when you look at the Big 12, when you look at the SEC. And just teams, quite frankly, that are much better.
It's really sad too because you've got the Blue Bloods in there. Like I said, I went to Tech, so I don't. There's no love lost for you.
First of all, the Blue Bloods are not good.
Yes.
They're not good.
Absolutely. Duke is not good. UNC is not good.
They're a joke. UNC is a joke.
UVA won a national championship a few years ago. They're the number 2 seed in this tournament. But like you, I'm fading UVA. I have not been impressed whatsoever with what I've seen from these guys. Now they have Tony Bennett. So even though they made history as the 1 seed to lose to the 16 seed a couple of years ago, I'm not going to pick them to lose in the first round of the March Madness. I might even pick them to go to the Sweet 16 purely off the strength of Tony Bennett. I think he's such an intelligent coach and he gets his guys to execute so well. But I don't like them in this tournament. Like you, I think Miami is a very strong shout. Nigel Pack, Isaiah Wall, and Jordan Miller, they can play really well. They've been doing good for most of the season. A sneaky team, if you're looking for upsets, I like the NC State Wolfpack. They're pretty athletic. They can cause problems for team. The other low seeds like Clemson is the 3. Not really sold on that. Some of the other regular schools you would expect to be up there, don't think they're going to be doing any good. I don't want to make this a homer segment because I did go to Virginia Tech, but they won the tournament last year and they're starting in a very similar position to where they did last year. They looked very promising at the start of the year. They have problems in the middle, and then they turn it around. Now, they were on much more of a hot streak towards the end of last regular season than they are right now, but they have been getting better ever since Hunter Couture came back from his injury. And if you look at Virginia Tech's path through the tournament, they had to play their early game last year. So you start off playing Notre Dame. You should win that game. They dominated Notre Dame when they played them earlier this year. You go ahead and then you play NC State. That's the problem game. I just talked about how NC State could win this tournament on the back of their athleticism. Virginia Tech is a lot more disciplined than those guys, and they can make more open shots. So really, whoever wins that game could be set up for a sort of momentum burst going ahead. After that, you've got Clemson as the 3. I already said I don't really have much confidence in them. And then you'd likely be playing UVA. If not UVA, maybe UNC. Both of those teams are beatable. So I really do think that Virginia Tech and NC State game could be pivotal moving forward.
Grant, what is the toughest thing to do in college basketball besides make free throws?
I was just gonna say it's make free throws.
Besides that, though.
Do you have a pre-planned answer, or are you
I have a
genuinely
pre-plan.
asking?
No, this is a pre-plan. This is like a rhetorical question, knowing that I have an answer to follow it up with because I'm riding.
Okay, well, good to hear that. If it's not make your free throws, for me personally, it would be go on the road and win as a young team.
You got that. Well, not as a young team, just go on the road and win in general. But one team that's been able to do that in the ACC this year has been Pittsburgh. Look for them. Could be a sneaky play, good future bet on FanDuel, DraftKings, Caesars, or BetMGM, whatever you want to use. Head over to the WSN website and get your promo code. Anyways, Pittsburgh. Absolutely love them for a few reasons. Blake Hinson's good. They're a physical team. They play really well down the paint. Same kind of story as Virginia Tech. Started the season promising, kind of fell off the map a little bit. And they do have work to do to get into the NCAA tournament. They need to show up in this tournament to have a chance to get in, whether they win it or get in at an at-large bid. So I like them with that motivational factor behind them. I'm not saying they're going to win the tournament because I think Miami is leaps and bounds better, but anything can happen at this point. So that would be my dark horse play in the ACC.
Yeah, I like that. And let's transition it on over to the SEC. We've had a lot of headlines coming out here just in college in general. The SEC sort of dominates sports now, especially during football season, but they're really, really on the come up in basketball season. If they haven't already taken over, maybe you say they don't have that perennial championship contender, so they're not there quite yet. But from top to bottom, the SEC might be the most competitive conference out there, at least one of the two or three up there. So you got to give them their respect. And this tournament, I think, is setting up to be a really good one. Alabama is the favorite to win this one, Tanner. What are your thoughts on, can they cash in their chips? And if they do, what are the chances of moving forward and making noise in March Madness?
Well, I'll just say that sports matter. Sports matter a lot in the SEC, and we know that. Brandon Miller, the big question there, like, what are you going to get out of him? Because he is the go-to player. He's got a lot of off the court, I should say. I'm thinking football, off the court issues happening right now. He seemed to play through all that stuff, but in the bigger spots, how's he going to handle it? The reason that I do like Alabama to win the conference is because Texas A&M did beat them in the final game of the season, and Alabama really didn't show a lot of good things in that game. They turned the ball over a lot. They missed from three a lot. And then late in the game, they just made a huge mistake, but that was after Brandon Miller fouled out. So if he can stay on the floor and he can be productive, I think they have a great chance. But without him, this team is not the best in the SEC. I would lean towards other programs like Texas A&M and Kentucky, Tennessee in there, Missouri as well. But with him on the floor playing effective basketball, they're very tough to beat. So I wouldn't bet this one just because I think there's so many issues going on with that program in general. It's got to be taking a toll on them right now. But if I had to pick, he's going to be on the floor. He's going to be good. Go with Alabama.
I think you hit the nail on the head. Alabama is the best team in the SEC. Let's not get that mistaken. But they can they win those consecutive games and go win a conference tournament with all the stuff that they've got going on, with the cloud that's hanging over their head, and just with the style that they play? Like, they put up a ton of threes, and obviously 3 points are worth 150% of 2 points. So if you can get a team that's good at shooting threes and that's their system they play and it works for them, you would favor them in a 7-game series, right? This isn't a 7-game series. All it takes is one day of cold shooting for you to go out of the tournament. And with the teams that are in the SEC, that could absolutely happen. I think that Mississippi State could be a potential tough matchup for these guys. If the 1-2 comes into play and you've got Texas A&M in the final, Texas A&M is really good. I mean, the job that Buzz Williams is doing with those guys is outstanding. They are very tough to beat. Kentucky is the 3 seed, maybe not as scary as in years past, but it's still Kentucky. They still got a lot of talent. So like you, Alabama, they've been in the past. They've been a sneaky prospect in the past. Are you going to put them in the Elite Eight? Are you going to put them in the Final Four? This is supposed to be that year where they take the leap and they win the conference tournament. They go into March Madness. They make the Final Four, maybe even make or win the championship game. But until they can prove it to me, it's one of those situations where I need to see it to believe in it. Alabama has always been a football school. Are they on the verge of not becoming a basketball school, but becoming a relevant basketball school on the national landscape? Absolutely. But they still have to go out there and prove it.
Yeah, and when things don't go their way, they seem to fall apart, especially in that Texas A&M game to end the season. Granted, it didn't make a difference. They had already won the SEC. They're going to be the number one seed coming into that conference tournament. But if you're not making your threes, you need to adjust. You can't be just throwing up Hail Mary prayers from 3 or 4 feet behind the line. It's just not going to work. You got to get the ball down low. You got to get in the paint and make easy scoring opportunities. And then that's going to open up the perimeter as well. Look at I'm a freaking college basketball analyst right now. I absolutely love it. But Alabama needs to be a little better than they were in that final game against Texas A&M. I mean, that's just the last one in my head because it's what I watched. But if they make their threes, they're going to be fine. If they miss them, they got to abort that and go with something else, because if they just keep shooting them and they're not going in, they will lose and they will be eliminated very early.
A team that probably won't get eliminated very early in most people's eyes, UCLA. Again, Jalen Clark is out with an injury, but this is still one of the best teams in the country. They are outstanding on defense. They're sixth in opponents' points per game. Gave myself a tongue twister there. Jaime Jaquez feels like he's been a mainstay there for the past few years, ever since UCLA made that run a couple of years ago. Tiger Campbell also somehow still there. These are veteran players that can get it done in multiple ways. They can make threes. They can take it inside. They can slow the game down. They're very efficient in those half-court sets when they need to score. Tiger Campbell's experience is invaluable for them. Personally, I'm looking at them to win the Pac-12, and that's not an upset. They're the number one seed. But Arizona's out there. Arizona is one of the 5 favorites to win March Madness. They've got a National Player of the Year candidate on their squad. So could they be pushed? Yes, but I still think the Bruins are going to get it done.
I mean, Jaime Jaquez is that guy. He's that good. They played Arizona in the season. UCLA got the win there. I fully expect UCLA to win moving forward. The one good thing about Arizona is they're very good on offense. They can make big shots down the stretch, but they fell apart against UCLA. And it's just quite frankly because the Bruins are a better basketball team, especially in the backcourt. I mean, they play great defense, and that's what makes a difference at this point in the year. Because I'll tell you what, defense is a mainstay. Offense is going to come and go, right? I mean, you're not going to be hot throughout every single game in the tournament, whether it's in conferences or March Madness. You need to be able to play consistently good defense, and Arizona gives up a lot of points. They give up a lot of wide open looks, and you just can't do that at this point in the year. Also, when I look at teams that can go on the road to win, UCLA is one of those teams. They've overcome a lot of adversity. They're going to have adversity throughout the tournament. I still like them. 9-2 on the road this season. So UCLA all the way. This is like the conference that I look at. Like it doesn't seem like it's going to be that much of a toss-up if UCLA just plays their basketball.
Yeah, I'm absolutely with you. And that's probably part of the reason why people like UCLA is that team with maybe the highest floor in the country. Maybe not a guaranteed championship winner in March Madness, but probably should get to the Sweet 16 at the absolute worst. A lot of people are going to have them in their Final Four, maybe even their championship game. As we move ahead, though, we're going to go over to the Big Ten. Purdue, number one team in the country a lot of the year. They've got the National Player of the Year, Zach Edey, on their squad. Obviously, they are the number one seed in this conference. But Tanner, what are your thoughts? Are they going to live up to that hype? Are they going to win this conference?
Man, they took so much of my money down the stretch. If you bet on Purdue, you know this. They lost a lot of people, a lot of money in the final games of the regular season. Now, they are on a 2-game winning streak right now, but there were a lot of times where they fell apart late, especially on the road. This team really struggled in the later half of the season going on the road and winning games, which concerns me. Now, with that all being said, though, they are the best team in the Big Ten. Like, hands down, clear as day, best team in the Big Ten. And if they get the ball down low in the paint to Edey and he delivers, they are going to be just fine. But outside of that, what they did in the not second half, I mean, the final stretch of the season concerns me. What about you?
Yeah, that final stretch you're talking about, they lost 4 out of their last 8 games. This is a team with only 5 losses on the season. And if you've got 4 of those in your last 8 games, it's one of those situations where it's great to have a great regular season record. It's great to be near the top of the national poll for a month here and there. But if you go into the postseason not hot, you don't even have to be cold. If you're just not at your best, you're going to get taken out. And they've got some potential matchup issues laying ahead of them. Northwestern, we were just praising UCLA's defense. Northwestern is also top 20 in opponents' points per game. They beat Purdue in their lone matchup this season. Purdue is 0-2 against Indiana. They could easily match up against these teams. In Indiana especially, you've got a guy like Trace Jackson Davis. He can take it to the day in the post. He can make some noise down there. Purdue, in my mind, I've never really loved these guys year to year, and maybe I have some of that bias hanging over my head, but I think that these guys are upsettable. That's my WSN ride the line word of the day, upsettable.
Oh, Grant's riding right now. Grant's riding. He's not riding on the Purdue Boilermakers. I think they're too one-dimensional. They're very one-dimensional right now. If Edey's not delivering down low, it really causes them to struggle on the perimeter. So I would probably fade them. I think I would fade them. I don't know if I'd pick a winner in this conference. It's like there's better opportunities to put your money on because the bottom half below them is not that good. But they've been really bad down the stretch, and that's concerning. When you look at March Madness, our biggest tip for March Madness betting, at least mine, is the fact that you need to look at what teams have done in the latter half and really the final third of the season. Who has momentum right now? You could look at a team who's under 500 going into a conference tournament, but if they dominated the second half of the season, they might be worth putting your money on, especially if they're getting a lot of points against heavy favorites.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's how my Hokies won the ACC tournament last year. I want to say we won 9 out of our last 11, win 4 games in 4 days to win the ACC tournament. You got to bet the hot hands sometimes, and that's just not Purdue lately. That was the Big 10. We're going to talk about the Big 12 now. I don't know how you're looking at it, but I feel like a lot of people, in my opinion, are going, is it going to be Kansas? Is it going to be Texas? Is it going to be the field? Maybe that's a little harsh on Kansas State because they've been good. TCU is the 6th seed, by the way. It's gotten some good results this season. But for me, it's got to be Kansas or Texas versus the field. Personally, I would take Kansas or Texas. But of those two, I like Texas. I've got some problems with Kansas. Texas just beat the Jayhawks 75-59 in their last game of the regular season. And Kansas is only 7-6 against ranked teams. It's for a team that won the national title last year and everybody looks at as this dominant power in college basketball. I just don't quite see it.
Kansas going to win the conference, Grant. No doubt about it. Kansas wins the conference. Not even a thought in my head, because it's very hard to beat a team twice in back-to-back scenarios, because this is going to be the Big 12 championship game. If I'm wrong, whatever. But the bottom line is these two teams are leaps and bounds better than the rest of the conference. Kansas State's good. Yeah, I know, but they're not Kansas. They're not Texas. You look at Kansas, Jalen Wilson has been really, really good. And also you get performance out of Grady Dick consistently. He's making big shots from the 3-point line. It was obvious they weren't going to walk into Austin, Texas and beat the Longhorns in that final game of the regular season. It really didn't mean as much to them. But moving forward, I think we're going to see a different Kansas team. They have gotten into trouble late in games. They have been in trouble on the road this season, but for the most part, they've found a way to win games down the stretch, which is something you need to look at. They might get into trouble, but they pull themselves out of trouble a lot, which is something I like with them. In a Big 12 championship game environment, I'm going to go with the more experienced squad in Kansas to get the job done.
That's fair enough. And we know the Big 12 beats up on itself, right? So one result here, like I said, they're 7-6 against ranked teams. Pretty much all those were other Big 12 opponents. They're going to win some. They're going to lose some. Again, it just comes down to who can rip off a few straight wins when you get to crunch time in those conference tournaments. The last conference we're going to talk about. Now, I know I said earlier the ACC was the worst of the Big 6. Normally, we talk about the Power 5 conferences, but we've got to make the exception here because the Big East is very good this season. This is just a bloodbath, a slaughterhouse. You've got Marquette, Xavier, Creighton, UConn, Providence. These are great teams. Villanova is the 6th seed. Like, my goodness, these are teams that have history of performing well in the postseason. Some of them have been excellent this season. Some of them just been good. Some of them have been on good runs lately. I mean, do you have a lean on this conference, or are you just going to sit back and watch the madness?
I'm so excited. Like, this is going to be the conference tournament to watch. And it opens up with UConn and Providence on Thursday, I believe, which is just going to be an epic first round game. And UConn's got a lot of work to do to win that one, even though they are better than Providence when they play their basketball. One team that I like a little farther down the list, it's not the Colin Gillespie Villanova Wildcats this year. It's a totally rebranded team, right? It's a new team. They're finding ways to win in the second half of the season. Another thing to look at. You look at their record right now, it's 16-15, but the second half has been much better than the first half for them, winning outright and against the spread. So they could make some noise at the bottom of that bracket, but Marquette is a really good basketball team. You look at UConn, though, they beat them. I could see UConn with Sonoga. If they get the ball down low, he can deliver and then kick it outside to guys that can make big shots. So it is a slobber knocker of a conference. That's how I would say, a slobber knocker. And I have no clue who's going to win it, and that's okay to say. But if I had to pick, I'm going to go with the UConn Huskies because this team is built different and they play with grit.
Yeah, I'm like you. I'm not even going to bother wasting my money here. A lot of the times, guys, it's okay. In fact, it's smart. It's profitable, quote unquote. You're not making money, but you're saving yourself from losing money. If you don't have a lean, just don't place the bet. I mean, any team really of 6, maybe even possibly more, if other teams can get hot, can win this tournament. Marquette, we didn't really show them love. They're having a sensational season. They're the 6th seed nationally. Cam Jones leading those guys. They've got Tyler Kolek giving you 8 assists per game. In college basketball, that's pretty rare, so that's fun to see. But yeah, all sorts of great talent in the Big East. Like you said, I think this is going to be the tournament to watch when I'm not watching my Hokies go for the back-to-back, obviously.
Definitely. So if you want to ride with me, go to DraftKings Sportsbook. Head over to WSN, actually. Click on our DraftKings link and go over there. You can get your first bet matched up to $1,000, I believe. So make sure you do that for college basketball. Grant, where are you taking your talents to place these college basketball bets?
Well, if I'm going to DraftKings, I'm also going to make sure I cash in on that free $50 bonus bet as soon as you sign up for your account. And of course, the bet $5 to win $150. If you bet a pregame money line at DraftKings and it comes true, you get a full cash payout plus $150 in bonus bets on top of the other $1,050 in bonuses that you already earned. DraftKings is obviously one of the great sports books. I think that FanDuel, sometimes if I'm in a desperate need, I just need something really quick. It has the most responsive sports book, so that's always a good place to go, especially if you're new as well, because the user interface is so sleek. It's so easy to navigate. If you want to go to FanDuel, you can get a $1,000 no sweat first bet. That means that you are liable to receive a 100% refund on your first bet if it misses, up to $1,000. All refunds come in the form of bonus bets. Those don't have cash, but if you place those bets and they win, you win cash prizes. So yeah, some really great sports book options. Again, if you want information on betting March Madness or just want to learn more about sports books, head over to WSN. That's going to do it for our college basketball segment there. And now, Tanner, it's time to kick our feet up, have a little bit of fun here. There were some crazy parlays from the weekend, and the one that stuck out to me, to you, to everybody, one bettor turned $1 into a $400,000 payout with a 6-leg UFC parlay, capped off by John Jones winning the heavyweight championship of the world. Have you ever seen something like that?
No, and I broke this one down for DraftKings on their social, and I was like looking at it. I was blown away by this one. The fact that someone turned $1 into 400K. They predicted like every individual round for most of the events, and then it ended with John Jones to finish by submission. But the fact that they could go $1 to 400K is ridiculous. Plus 39 million odds. And then they did the same thing. They took out John Jones and they turned $1 into 72,000. It was funny too, because I was looking at some of the comments off the video that I posted, and someone's like, how'd this guy hit a plus 39 million odds parlay? I can't even hit a straight bet.
Yeah, I mean, for real, it's literally plus 39 million odds. So what are the odds of that? Plus 39 million. I just can't possibly imagine. Like you said, too, it wasn't just fighter A is going to beat fighter B. It was, this is going to happen in this round in this method. And they did that for six legs. It's crazy. It's mind blowing. And I don't know if their strategy was, I'm just going to place as many as I possibly can. Like, who knows how many $1 bets they placed. But my God, if you win nearly $500,000 off of it, it was absolutely worth it.
Imagine putting like $3 or $4 down. Like,
that's the crazy part, because that's always the devil on your shoulder, right? Because we've all won some parlays before, and you look back at it, you're placing it, and you're thinking, well, I've got to manage my bankroll, and I've got to split this down. I got to be responsible, so I'm going to put, let's say, $5 on this, and you win $100, and you go, well, if I had put 25 on it, I would have had half of $500. We've all been there before, but in this scenario, where literally $1 extra would make you a millionaire practically, that's just crazy.
Yeah, I told my mom about this one, and every time that she asks me like how's sports betting going or whatever, I'll go to the casino or something, and I'll call her up, and she'll be like, "How'd you do?" And usually when you go to the casino and you're trying to turn money into something like in one day, it's not super easy. So she has this like preconceived notion that like people don't win in sports betting. And she's like, why don't you just play some $1 bets like that? Like you can win 400K. I'm like, the odds of that happening, like probably like getting hit by lightning 15 times in one day, getting eaten by a shark in like swimming in the freaking, I don't know, Atlantic Ocean. And then also, I don't know, getting hit by a bus too, which it's crazy.
And we got to say too, listen, it's okay if you're gambling for fun, you're gambling responsibly, but please don't be somebody who thinks that they're going to be the next person to turn $1 into $400,000. Sportsbooks account for those crazy parlays. They know you're not going to win most of the times. They're going to come out on top. So just gamble responsibly. We don't want you to think that we're telling you to go out there and place plus 39 million odds bets.
Yeah, and then there was another big bet from Celtics Knicks that you broke down.
Yeah, so this bettor turned a $50 bonus bet into $10,000 right on the dot. 10,000. That's kind of crazy to me. That's the craziest part, honestly, is that it was exactly a $10,000 payout. This one was 9 legs, I want to say. I've got it right here. It was RJ Barrett 2+ assists, Al Horford 10+ points, Jaylen Brown 25+ points, Julius Randle 25+ points, Tatum 25+ points, Mitchell Robinson 10+, Marcus Smart 10+, RJ Barrett 20+, and then Julius Randle 8+ rebounds. Plus 20,000 odds, again, turned a $50 bonus bet. So not even real cash, just like a sign-up bonus like we were talking about earlier. You make an account with DraftKings, you get a $50 bonus bet, promo codes on WSN. You take that $50 bonus bet, you apply it to plus 20,000 odds, and you win $10,000. That's a pretty good day in the office.
Hey, you can't win if you don't gamble. You can't ride if you don't get on the bike.
I think we might have to rework that one. I was hoping for something a little more artistic than the bike. I thought you had something masterful coming, and then just the bike, it doesn't flow off the tongue enough.
Hey, you can't ride on any sports book unless you head to WSN. Right, you riding right now? You riding?
I'm getting close, Tanner. We've still got another segment to go, though, so maybe we'll see at the end of the show. We're going to round it out with our favorite segment, as we do at the end of pretty much every show. We're going to give you guys some betting picks looking forward. Now, we're recording this on Tuesday morning. This episode's most likely coming out on Wednesday, so we don't quite have game lines for the NBA, so we're going to save you on those. But what we are going to do is we're going to look at some futures bets. And now, Tanner, again, the Boston loyalist, he's sticking with his Celtics, and he's going to tell you why he likes them to win the Eastern Conference.
And then also, I'm going to give him a reason to come back next week, too. We're going to give picks for every single first and second round or first round game, I should say, first round game on the bracket. So make sure you tune in for that on next week's show. But we're talking NBA right now. And do we want to start with the East or the West?
Well, I just said you're talking about your Celtics, so let it rip.
Okay, I blacked out for a second because I was so locked in on
You're still riding.
I'm still riding. I'm riding all over the NCAA tournament right now. But anyways, like you said, the Celtics are favored to win the East at plus 135. The Bucks are plus 190 right now in DraftKings Sportsbook. And when you look at that, it's a significant difference. Like say you put $100 on Boston, it would return 135. You put 100 on the Bucks, it would return 190. So that's a significant difference right there. I do like your strategy of going with Milwaukee because one, the value's higher, and two, they look pretty indestructible as of late. But I'm still going to be on Boston. I think we saw it last year. They started cold. They got hot at the right time, and they found a way. When this team's firing all cylinders, they're very good. And Jason Tatum, when he's not missing and not complaining, he's pretty damn good as well. And we've seen him in big spots. He has been the guy outside of last year's NBA Finals. But in the Eastern Conference, he was pretty good. So as long as they can contain Giannis, it's probably not going to be able to happen. But you got to be able to shut down the guys around him so you can limit the damage there. When I look at the Celtics and the Bucks, those two teams are leaps and bounds above everyone in this division. Sixers, Cavs, I don't see them competing with the top two teams there, and I don't see them upsetting either of those over a 7-game series. So I'm going to be on the Celtics here. Plus 135, probably should have got it a little earlier than now, but if you want to grab it, get it right now.
I'm in an interesting spot with the Sixers. I want to touch on them since you brought them up. If you're from Philadelphia or, hey, you just like them to win the East, they're a plus 475. So that's great value. Next closest is the Cavaliers at plus 1,400. So the sportsbooks are telling you there's a very good chance that one of the Bucks, Celtics, or Sixers are going to win this conference. I think that the Sixers are really not that much worse than the Celtics, but the problem is if they match up with the Celtics own these guys. They're 3-1 against them this season. That's a trend that's held true for who knows how long, the past half decade. Joel Embiid said in a press conference a couple of years ago when someone asked him about the rivalry with Boston that it's not a rivalry because they always kick their you-know-what. And that just hasn't changed. As impressive as the Sixers have been lately and just over the course of the season. I mean, James Harden just had a 20 assist night with only one turnover. And these guys, if they played Boston, I would honestly pick Boston to win in 5 or 6 games, even though I truly think Philadelphia could realistically make it to the NBA Finals with their roster. The matchup, it just doesn't work in their favor. I would still take Milwaukee before them, like I said earlier in the show. Don't want to beat the dead horse. And I would take Boston to beat them in that series. My one problem I will say with the Celtics, Tanner, is I saw a tweet, and it was from a satirical account the other day, but I actually think it was one of those situations where they're trying to poke fun and get impressions, but sometimes they accidentally stumble onto a good point. They said Jason Tatum is the modern Paul George, and now Paul George is still playing, obviously. But when he was in Indiana, he was that guy who was taking over, giving you 30, 40, 50 points, taking some of the best teams to the wire. We remember he had those famous duels with the Dwayne Wade, LeBron James, Chris Bosh Miami Heat team. Sorry, I'm stumbling all over myself. And he had some big playoff performances, and he looked great. People are arguing, is he a top 5 player in the league? But he just couldn't quite get it done. Now, Tatum already led his team to the finals, so he's got that over Paul George. But it's those situations. I don't want to focus too narrowly on what happened, but it's games like what you saw against the Knicks and some other games this season where he'll go 6 of 24 from the field with 17 points, and the team loses a game that they had a chance to win at the end. And there's too many instances of those for me to believe that he is truly a top 5 player in the league, like people were saying earlier in the year when he was leading the MVP conversation. That's honestly my biggest holdout on the Celtics. You don't know what you're going to get from Tatum, and we've talked about this before, you and I, obviously. One night, Tatum and Brown can be A+++. One night, they can both be Fs. One night, one of them's an A+, one night, one of them's an F. You just never know with those guys. And for a futures bet where you're looking at what's safe, either what's really, really great value or what's safe, the Celtics have neither for them.
Yeah, you look at the Bucks. I mean, it's probably a little safer just because of the fact that they're going to get the ball down low to Giannis, and he's going to deliver in some capacity. You look at Celtics; they all rely on the 3 ball a lot. So if they aren't hitting those, it's a rough night. If they're not hitting shots, rough night. And Tatum, like we were talking about on another show, that he's the PRA king, right? He's the PRA king, not necessarily because he's performing every night, but because he just takes such a bulk of the workload that the numbers go up. Like, for example, like 6 of 24 from the field. That's not good. That's not productive, but he's still going to drop 20 points, and he's still going to contribute with assists and rebounds because he's just all over the floor. But it doesn't mean that he's being efficient.
Tanner, do you know how many games the Bucks have won in their last 18?
I think 18, right?
17.
17.
They just lost the other day to the Sixers. They lost by 3.
Yeah.
But those guys, man, they're my pick for a reason. I'm going to stick with them. One pick, though, well, I guess the only other pick that we still need to discuss is the Western Conference. Now, if you look at DraftKings Sportsbook, since that we were on, what we were on for the East, the Phoenix Suns are the odds-on favorite to win here at plus 200. The Denver Nuggets, who are the top seed in the conference and by a decent margin, are plus 330. The Golden State Warriors. Are you ready for this, Tanner? They are 3rd in odds to win the Western Conference at plus 500. Before we even get into the pick, can you tell me that that's a ridiculous spot to put the Warriors, a team that is the worst road record in the NBA?
Yeah, I mean, it's still, I think, a good spot to have them in. I'm going to be honest with you, Grant, because the West sucks, first of all. So you look at the Mavericks, like, are they going to be able to figure it out? They've gotten hot on the homestand. Grizzlies, Ja Morant issues, Clippers. Yeah, the Clippers got a good team. But when I look at the Warriors, they got guys that have been there, done that, and that means something in the postseason. So even though they haven't won on the road in the regular season, I still don't mind them there. I mean, this team could easily get back to the NBA Finals out of the West with the talent around them. And at plus 500, I think it's a steal value-wise.
I mean, it's good value, yes, but in my opinion, there's a 0% chance they get to the Western Conference Finals, or excuse me, the NBA Finals. I really, really don't see them winning the Western Conference Finals. So plus 500 might look good on paper, but if that bet doesn't cash, you just took a loss of however much you put down as a stake. So that's not good value in my eyes. I'm totally fading the Warriors there. I think the Clippers have a better chance. I think the Mavericks have a better chance. I'm 100% honest. I think the Lakers have a better chance. The Sacramento Kings, a lot of people, we don't know what to expect from the Kings. They haven't been to the playoffs in like 16 years.
It's amazing it's amazing they're still the 3 seed right now. It's amazing.
Oh, and they're going to be the 2 seed. You know what? Because Ja Morant, he's got his situation going on. We're just going to leave it at that. But the Grizzlies are now they're 7 games behind the Nuggets. You know what the Kings are? They're 7.5 games behind. That means they're a half game off of the 2 seed. John Morant is going to miss Tuesday night's game. You will have already found out the result of that game when you hear this episode against the Lakers. He could potentially be out for longer moving forward. It wasn't a 2-game suspension. It was a suspension of at least 2 games. Taylor Jenkins said that the suspension is indefinite. If he misses another couple of weeks and the Kings win some games, they could finish the year as the 2 seed. And it's absolutely crazy that the potential 2 seed is 8th in the odds to win the West at plus 3,500. That's where the value is.
I'm not going to disagree with you there, but just the fact of the matter with the Warriors, it's a team that's been there, done that. Curry's going to hit big shots down the stretch. You can look at the regular season losses. You can look at the fact that they've had trouble playing from behind, but the fact of the matter is they've still been there. They know what it's like. They've been in big spots, and I think that means something. But my pick overall right now, the way it's looking, I like the Suns at plus 200. I know I'm going with the favorites there, but who cares? The Suns look really good. KD is back in shape. He doesn't look like he missed a beat. He really looks like he's playing well with the new guys, Devin Booker, DeAndre Ayton. I mean, everyone's come together. Chris Paul. If you bet these guys, if you bet Chris Paul over assists, DeAndre Ayton over rebounds, Booker over points, and KD over points, you're probably going to hit your same game parlay a lot down the final stretch of the season. So I think they're going to be tough to beat when it comes down to it in a 7-game series.
I definitely agree they're going to be tough to beat. And Devin Booker is totally thriving as the second option on his team. But there are still concerns with them. I don't really have a lean on the Western Conference. I'm warming on the Suns more so than I was before, but I still don't see them as a team that I can guarantee is going to make it to the conference finals. And a lot of the times when you're picking futures, you're looking at teams who I know for a fact they're going to get to the conference finals, and from there, they just have to win it. I don't feel that way about the Suns. Now, are they the most likely to of the Western Conference teams? Sure. But let's look at the game that they just played against the Mavericks. The Mavericks have a losing record since acquiring Kyrie. Granted, their offense has been off the charts historically. I think they're the only team in NBA history to average over 120 points per 100 possessions, if I'm getting those numbers right. But still, a losing record. It took Kevin Durant and Devin Booker scoring 73 points on over 65% shooting to get a 4-point win. And it took Ish Wainwright making 4 threes in the 4th quarter to come up big for them. The problems that I was talking about with them is that obviously the injuries, but then also your lack of bench depth. That reared its ugly head. The Mavericks outscored them 48-28 on the bench. If you get in a 7-game series with them, can the Mavericks put up with them? Absolutely. I mean, we saw what Luka did on his own. If you bring in Kyrie to one side, Durant to the other, sure, that's a little slanted to Durant, but does that make it enough to win a series? We don't quite know. We got to see it play out. The other teams like the Nuggets, I would take the Suns to win, but can I 100% tell you they will beat the Nuggets, especially with how good the Nuggets teamwork has been? I can't say it. So me personally, just like I'm fading the Big East, I'm pretty much fading the Western Conference, at least at this point. Maybe I'll be able to give you guys a more accurate pick when the postseason starts, but for now, I'm out on those teams.
Yeah, the Mavericks are definitely a good team to grab at pretty much almost 10-1 right now on DraftKings, just because the fact of the matter, you can hedge if they get to the Western Conference and still make some money there. So they are the long shot. I mean, not long shot because there's really not a team that's great in the West, but at plus 950, I'd consider them a long shot to get there. I could see them doing some damage as well. They got to grow up, as Jason Kidd would say. But I like Suns. I like Mavericks. I don't like Grizzlies. Warriors, I think, have value at 500. Clippers, I'd probably take the Mavericks over the Clippers. But it's going to be a very, very exciting NBA playoff season.
Tanner, can I tell you something?
You're riding.
That's exactly what I was going to say. You read my mind. I'm riding, Tanner. I am riding with these NBA picks. And I'm riding with the first episode of Ride the Line on WSN. And I think that was a pretty great first show.
This was the greatest kickoff to the greatest show in sports betting entertainment that you could ever imagine in your life, Grant, because my name is Tanner Kern, and I am a certified G, and I'm better at pretty much everything than Grant Mitchell. And that's the bottom line, because Tanner Kern said so.
Tanner Kern's word holds no value in this conversation. Everything we do, I've known Tanner for years. He starts off, even when we're not recording, when we're just meeting with one another, this is how he talks to me. I'm going to file a harassment in the workplace suit against you.
I'm going to call up Dana White and get us on the card for UFC 286 and whoop your ass.
All right, well, I'm going to fill out a 6-leg parlay, and I'm going to make $500,000 off of me beating you via submission in the heavyweight champion. That was episode 1 of Ride the Line, and it was absolutely electric. Thank you all so much for tuning in, and we really look forward to being back with you guys next week. Make sure you leave some feedback on the show, and we look forward to seeing you guys next time.